Hi, everybody. This is Bonnie Viamon from the DLI department. I'm going to talk to you today about the anatomy of benchmark units, grades 3 through 5. We're going to look at the weeks, the lessons, and how to condense them into a 60-minute literacy block. So, the content objective for this session is to understand the structure and time allotted for each component of the literacy block and evaluate which parts to discard. And the language objective would be to write lesson plans that include all essential components and practices within Benchmark. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, the shortest amount of time that Benchmark has for literacy block is 90 minutes, and our IL Texas literacy block is 60 minutes. So we have to do a little bit of math to figure out how much time we have for each component. So for a 60-minute literacy block, we would have 10 minutes for phonics and word study workshop, 33 minutes for readers workshop, and 16 minutes for writers workshop. So today we're going to take a closer look at readers workshop and writers workshop. Both readers workshop and writers workshop have some time for mini lesson, which is our direct instruction. And then they have about 20 minutes for readers workshop and 7 minutes for writers workshop, where you would meet with a small group, and the rest of the class would read or write independently, or you would have some time to confer with students individually. And you might possibly do that in a breakout room. And then you have 2 minutes for sharing and reflection. This might be a time where you also review your objectives with students. So again, I'm not going to talk about the phonics because it's pretty straightforward, and it just has a mini lesson, and it's not as complicated or detailed as the readers and writers workshop. So Benchmark also has this side note that says you can do interactive read aloud and vocabulary workshop at another instructional time. So I'm not including that in my reading block. They suggest to do it maybe in a morning meeting or do it during science or social studies. So that would be a discussion that we would have to discuss. For this session, I'm just going to cut it out completely and not have it in my literacy block. So let's go ahead and look at Reader's Workshop. So this is Unit 1 pacing guide. And there are some similarities in every unit and in every week. And those are these 3 components right here: interactive read aloud, shared reading, and the minute lesson. And I do want to point out that this interactive reading aloud is what they deem as other instructional time. So again, I'm not going to plan for this in my literacy block. Now, when you zoom in and look a little bit closer, we've got the strategies and skills at a glance for the unit. And again, we see some patterns in every unit. Every unit has, again, these 3 categories: interactive read aloud, shared reading, and mini lesson. But I want to remind you that we are not going to be planning for this other instructional time because again, the 60-minute block does not allow for this, and that might be something we consider discarding. Another thing to consider is that every unit has some skills that are marked with a check, and those are the skills that will be assessed at the end of the unit. So again, if we are going to decide what to keep and what to let go for the unit, we definitely want to keep these skills that are assessed. So let's look at what a day would look like. So we've got the strategies and skills here. Every day, again, has these 3 categories. And remember that this category is considered the other instructional time. So again, we're not going to talk about how that's going to be, but I would point out, you might want to notice that fluency is covered in shared reading. Comprehension, genre analysis, and author's craft is in the mini lesson, and vocabulary and word solving is also in the mini lesson. So there is some repetition there. So you are going to be covering things that would be in the interactive read aloud. But for our circumstances, we are going to cut that out and see what uh, our lesson would be for one day. So remember that this is direct instruction for 5 minutes, and another 6 minutes of direct instruction here. So we have 5 minutes of shared reading, 6 minutes of a mini lesson, and then don't forget that we have that 20 minutes where you would work with a small group in a breakout room while the rest of your students are working or reading independently. And then we have that 2 minutes where we come back together, share, reflect, and I suggest reviewing the objectives. All right, so that is the Reader's Workshop in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and look at the Writer's Workshop. So every unit pacing guide looks like this. It has six categories that are the same categories each unit, and one unit is also 6 weeks. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and these 6 weeks or 6 categories actually follow along with the writing process. So the first week is immersion. The second week is generating and developing ideas. Next, we have drafting and revising your first rough draft, revising and editing your rough draft, more revising and editing, and then finally publishing, reflecting, and setting up experiences for transfer. And again, this is in every single unit. So something you might be asking yourself is, how can we do this in 2 languages when we have 3 weeks in each language? Because ultimately, at the end of the 6 weeks, you will have a finished product that the students have written. But we are working in 2 languages, so we would have to decide how we would do that every unit. So let's look at a day in the life of Writing Workshop. So every day, we have 7 minutes for our mini lesson, or it could be a grammar workshop. This would be our direct instruction. Then we have 7 minutes where we would work with a small group while the rest of the students are working independently, or we would be confirming. This might be a breakout room that we do in Zoom while the other kids are in doing their assignments. And then we have our 2 minutes share and reflect and review objectives. Okay. So, like I mentioned, I'm not going to go over the phonics today, but I do want to look at what would our day look like, what would our hour look like all together, and how might we let's bring it all together, and how might we cut things out and make sure we're hitting the important items. So, always keep in mind, what were those assessed skills that we saw in the skills and strategies for the unit. You definitely want to keep those in. So if that's the case, you might find when you look at this shared reading lesson, you might find that the skill that you're teaching that day is not one of the assessed ones. So that's a possibility of something that you might cut so that you would have more time that day for, let's say, your mini lesson. Okay. Um, Another idea is to be creative with your weekly time. You might say, "Wow, 16 minutes for a writer's workshop? That's not enough time." Well, keep in mind that you have 15 minutes a week for phonics, 2 hours a week for reader's workshop, and 1 hour for oh 1 hour for writer's workshop. So you might decide that you would do writer's workshop once a week so that you have more time with the students and they can have more time to write. So now it's your turn. I would like you to look at an upcoming day in your lesson plan book or wherever you like to write your detailed lessons, and go ahead and write in what you're going to be doing for phonics. It should be very simple for the phonics. It would just be jotting down the title of the lesson, right? But looking closer at the reader's workshop, what are you going to do for the mini lesson, shared reading? What do they suggest for the small group? And then, of course, to make it easy, I just added in for the sharing and reflection review objectives. That's what my focus would be for those 2 minutes. So you can pause the video right now and do a little bit of practice and check out the next day or next week's, and see if this would be a helpful tool um, for you. All right, so I just want to review our objectives. The content objective was to understand the structure and time allotted for each component in the literacy block and to start evaluating what we might want to discard. So I hope you were able to do that. And then the other one was to write a lesson plan that includes all components and practices within the benchmark. Uh, so I hope also you were able to do a little bit of planning during this session. Um, Please reach out to me for any questions. I would love to continue helping out. Have a great day.